This week's Torah portion, Ahrei Mot Kedoshim. We're going to focus on Ahrei Mot, the Torah portion which discusses the laws of Yom Kippur, or Rabbi Raphael wants to understand, and there's a lot to understand. He says, first off, we need to understand how awesome and miraculous is it that there is one day, right, in this embedded system, there is one day of the year that God forgives for everything. All of the sins, of course, between us and God, not between us and people. We need to be menschers and ask for forgiveness. But between us and God, there's one day, kapara. You're atoned for and forgiven. And he says, how amazing is this, right? This notion of his, this question of things that 150 years after Rabbi Raphael in Morocco, guys like Hermann Cohen in Germany are going to write books about this idea of kapara. And you know, the sort of the as if it's the cornerstone of Judaism. So he starts off by saying, Yom Kippur in itself, we need to really understand how incredible this is. And he goes on to understand what really is all the day about. And I want to focus on one thing that I think is Rabbi Raphael at his absolute best. The he-goat, right? We have two he-goats. All of the Israelites are outside, right? Like that scene in Life of Brian. We're all outside watching. It's a different scene. But anyway, the Kohen Gadol, there are two he-goats, two Seirim, and there's a lottery. One is sacrificed, and one is sent to Azazel. One is basically banished. Don't want to even get into what happens to that he-goat. And all of our sins are put onto this goat. And Rabbi Raphael says, you know, there are a lot of things we need to understand about Yom Kippur, but there is no doubt that this he-goat that's banished to hell, it's one of the more perplexing things for a person that, you know, hopes to be rational and lead a rational life. You know, what is this about? He even says, one could even ask, right, we know that all of the Israelite sins are put on the back, perhaps metaphorically speaking, of this he-goat. And so he even asks, you know, that this must be a very strong he-goat, right? One could even ask, who is this he-goat that has the power to carry all of our sins? And he starts off by beautifully saying, "Ve'emet ki yadati shekol ha'inyanim elu me'edim al atzmam sheyesh bahem sodot nisgavim." He says, in truth, and this is rare for him, because he goes for the literal meaning. He says, in truth, there are you know, incredible secrets hidden in this scene, which, you know, hopefully one day when the Bet Mikdash comes, we'll understand. He could also be alluding here to what Nachmanides talks about the ransom that this he-goat is given to and who it's given for, but that's Kabbalah, we're not going to go into that. But then he gives his beautiful interpretation. He says, what's the purpose of this day? The purpose of this day is for us to fast, right? Lit'anot inuim. We are meant to inflict upon us a burdensome state of mind, physically, mentally, in order to feel sorry, in order to ask for forgiveness for God and from our fellow friends, family, and who not. And he says, the sacrificial work, and these two he-goats are part and parcel of this work that we are doing internally. Meaning, on the day, we are meant to fast and to be in a mindset where we want to say sorry. We want to ask for forgiveness. And this is beautiful. He says, that is the purpose of these two he-goats being sacrificed. You are meant to visualize and pin into your hearts when you see the one goat that's being sacrificed. It's being butchered, so to speak. It's as if it's being told, Toltse, come out. We're taking out all of the sins out of the sacrificed goat, which is going to God. And the other goat is meant to have us look and think, that's what can happen to us, right? What happens to the he-goat that goes to hell if we don't become better menschlach, if we don't become better people. So the whole purpose is to visualize, to embed in our hearts, to help us in this sort of self-inflicting agony throughout the day in order to really do tshuva, in order to really get our act together. So these are a few thoughts on the Torah portion of Ahrei Mot and Ahrei Mot Kedoshim and Yom Kippur. Shabbat Shalom.